Welcome to today's video. It's going to be a little bit different to the usual content I put out, and that's mainly because it's kind of me telling a story, which is how I got stuck in the USA during COVID and this whole pandemic, what went down, how it went down, and why I couldn't return to Japan for 4 months. So it all started when I decided to go to the USA to hang out with Chris, aka Bryce Miata, for a couple weeks. About three weeks, I think, total the initial trip was going to be. We're going to do some collab stuff, make some sick content, have a bunch of fun, and that was pretty much the plan. Just go over there. It was kind of spontaneous. We didn't really have any kind of plan or anything. It was just, let's just go and do some cool stuff and have fun. And at the time, obviously, we knew that this COVID situation was developing and everything, but there really wasn't much information out there as to what was going on. And at the time of my flight, there was no problem with international travel. They were still saying that this whole COVID thing is just gonna be another flu. People need to stop freaking out. The worst thing that was happening then was people were buying a bit too much toilet paper. And that was pretty much it. Everyone was still kind of calm, well, except for that fact of people going crazy at the store for toilet paper. But everyone was kind of chill. The media was saying not to get freaked out by it. It was nothing to be worried about. So at that point, me and my wife, we made a decision that it was still okay for me to go to the US because it seemed like everything was okay. And all the information we were reading and seeing online on the TV from, the CDC and everything at that time was literally just, don't freak out. Everything's okay and it's not as bad as you think. Then I jumped on the flight, we got to the States, and I think it was literally within 3 days of me landing, everything shut down.
The growing travel danger as coronavirus cases jump and all those canceled flights.
So when I left Japan, it was roughly the first week of March. And after the 3 or 4 days that I was in the USA and everything kind of shut down with travel and Japan locked down the borders and all that kind of stuff, I was kind of like, what exactly is going on? I didn't get an email or a call or anything from my airline where my flights were booked with to say, hey, your flight's been canceled because of the pandemic or the current situation, or my flight is still running, they're gonna get me home. Do I need to leave now? Or am I stuck here? I had no idea what was going on. And I think that out of everything, that was probably the biggest frustration, was lack of information. They just kind of assumed everyone knew what was going on, even though there was no information for anyone to really self-educate or figure out how they were getting home or what's going on. And essentially, I kind of just played the waiting game for a while. I waited, I think it was 2 to 3 weeks. No, 2 weeks, and then roughly when there was a week left to when my flight was supposed to be leaving, I called the airline to say, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard anything. Is my flight still happening? What's going on? And after I finally got put through to the right department, they literally just explained to me, oh no, all flights and services are completely canceled to Japan currently, which was obviously a bit of a shock. Like I said, I had no communication from them whatsoever, and they just gave me this number, like a voucher or a ticket number, and they said when they just said when you know that you're allowed to return and services are running, you can check on the status on this website and webpage, call us back, give us that number, and you'll be able to book your flight back home. So at that point, it was pretty much the waiting game once again. Now, after roughly a month or so had passed, I noticed that the airlines were running flights again. On their website, it said that services had started up to Narita Airport here in Tokyo. So I got excited, thought I could go home, and I called them, and they said that I needed to get permission from the Japanese government. Now, at this point, I did hear some rumors about other people, foreigners like in my situation, that were out of the country for various reasons, work, family emergencies, funerals, child's being born and stuff like that, out of the country, that kind of stuff, just things that you would leave the country for to go and celebrate with a family, birthdays, special celebrations, all that kind of family stuff, right? We're denied entry back into the country. And I heard rumors about it, and I'd seen a few things on Twitter, but I never really saw anything official. And after I spoke to the airline, they pretty much said, hey, you need permission You need to make sure that the Japanese government will let you in. You're not allowed on the flight without any sort of paperwork or anything like that. We can't put you on the flight in a seat until you provide us with that paperwork. And that's when the situation went from I am potentially about to go home to I have no idea if I'm ever gonna make it home this year. And that's mainly because the Japanese government was the only country that did this, but they completely blocked all foreign residents from returning to Japan, from crossing the border back into the country. This is something that, from what I read, is completely unheard of, unfair, and all this kind of stuff was thrown everywhere about it. And it's still a big issue right now. There are still foreign residents unable to come into the country because they're not considered as special circumstance, or they're not on the list that classifies them as, the circumstance as to why they left the country, or for them to then be able to re-enter, if that makes sense. But yeah, they pretty much said, we don't care. There's literally foreign residents that own property, run companies or own companies in Japan, all this kind of stuff that had to leave the country for a funeral, family emergency, or business, work, all that kind of stuff, that were then denied re-entry. They can't come back until full travel is back to normal, or they're just letting people back in again, because they're not considered as, once again, this special circumstances thing. So at that point, I found these articles of all these people complaining about it, like on Gaijin Poet and all these other Japanese news websites and stuff, where literally everyone was just stuck in limbo. There are articles talking about it, foreign residents unable to leave Japan for fear that they're never going to be able to come back in, and the same, just no one was able to go home. No one was able to go back to Japan, to their family, to their wives, to their kids, nothing. So at that point, I called the Japanese embassy in Miami, and I was able to talk to a representative there, and pretty much, explained my situation, the time that I left the country, and they confirmed, unfortunately, my fears that I can't return to Japan. They said that it doesn't matter, that I'm married to a Japanese national. Right now, just no foreign residents whatsoever are allowed. Now, if I had a Japanese citizenship and a Japanese passport, no problem. If you're a Japanese resident, no issue whatsoever. But yeah, just if you were a foreign resident, if you did everything that a Japanese citizen does, pay tax, work in Japan, own a house in Japan, have a wife and kids in Japan that are Japanese, doesn't matter. If your passport's not Japanese, you're not allowed in the country. And that's literally what happened. So at that point, I pretty much I would keep going, creating content, trying to figure out what was going on, but also not planning to be in the US long term, because my plan was at any point the Japanese government could allow this, I'd go, and then they could change their mind again, because what we started to see was, the government would keep going back on their word and changing things, and it was just a huge mess. In short, probably the best thing that I did was contacting the embassy every week. I would speak to a different representative, and if I missed, if I was busy during the day and wasn't able to talk to them between opening hours, I would call the one in California and talk to a representative at the Japanese embassy in California, because of the time difference, right? And eventually they just started giving me more and more tips and information as to what I needed to do to try and get in the country. A few times they actually suggested that I get my wife, Mayumi, here in Japan, to call the immigration office locally in Tokyo and literally just scream at them for 5-10 minutes that she wants her husband home, and then that I may be allowed and considered as a special circumstance to return home. But obviously that wasn't gonna work, and quite frankly, I don't feel comfortable with that, because I knew from reading all the articles and the forums of everyone complaining about not being able to come back to Japan, there were people that were literally trying to come back into the country because a family relative and stuff had passed away, and they wanted to be there with their family for the funeral, and they were not counted as the special circumstance and allowed to enter the country, which is actually a huge deal, because in Japan, when a family member dies and funerals and all that kind of stuff, it is taken super seriously. It's a big thing in Japanese culture. So for them to be denying that is a huge deal. So yeah, ultimately I was left playing the waiting game, calling the embassy all the time. I wasn't complaining or anything like that. It's more of just trying to get information and find out when I can go home so I can start planning for it. And obviously, like I said, my goal was the moment I knew I was going to be allowed to return, it was just go as quickly as I could and, you know, try to wrap things up in the States, because at that point things started getting like growing a lot with, you know, the projects and the stuff that I was taking on with the cars and stuff I had and everything. And obviously, like, I knew I was going to be stuck there for a while. That's why I decided to do the giveaway car and all that kind of stuff as well. Now initially I was planning on just doing like a super simple, you know, Miata build giveaway thing, and it was going to be stock and all this kind of stuff, but things escalated with that, as you guys know. We talked about that previously. But yeah, literally I was stuck in the USA, and I had an ESTA visa, which meant I had to be out of the country in 90 days. And, you know, obviously that started getting close to the expiry date, and I started worrying about overstaying my visa in the USA. So I had to contact the immigration office in the US and explain my situation, provide proof. They extended it by another 30 days for me, and they said like they can keep extending it by 30-day increments, as long as I need it, as long as, you know, I had a thing from like the Japanese embassy saying I still can't return. So anyways, pretty much the Japanese embassy eventually sends me an email and says, you know, pretty much I'm allowed to go back to Japan. So what was happening was, in like the last month that I was stuck in the USA, so like the third month in, the Japanese government started lifting a lot of the restrictions to foreign residents coming into the country and expanding that kind of bracket of what special circumstance, you know, if you fitted in that bracket and to be classified as that, right? And one of them was spouses. So all of a sudden I was able to enter, and that's when I flew back as quickly as I could. There are still people that are not spouses that, like I said, own property, businesses, and all that kind of stuff here in Japan, and as far as everything on paperwork are a resident of Japan, but because they don't hold a citizenship or a Japanese passport, they can't enter the country still. And the Japanese government has been pretty much called out by that, by just about every country. If you guys jump on Google and you do a bit of research, I'm sure you'll start to find a lot of these articles if you search and if you're interested in it. But in short, that's what happened. That's how I got stuck in the USA. It was super simple. It kind of, in hindsight, looking back, I think now that we know what happened with the pandemic and everything like that, if this ever happens again, I definitely will be canceling my travel plans. But I have never seen in my lifetime, and I don't think anyone else really has, anything like this happen before. So the fact that, and which is, I think, why there was so much lack of information and the wrong information was being told at the start from the get-go. And, you know, that's why, like, yeah, I did feel a bit uneasy jumping on the flight because I didn't really know what was going on. But the media and everything everywhere was saying, hey, like, don't freak out, it's just like another flu and blah, 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 blah. So it was frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's over and done with now. I'm back home. It feels good to be home. But I know there was tons of people asking me how it all went down and why I got stuck there to begin with and why I couldn't return. And it's frustrating, but yeah, like I said, I'm back home now. It's already done. It's in the past, ready to move on. But I hope that everyone can kind of learn from this. I want to see the Japanese government kind of, you know, if for some reason my story gets heard by them and all that kind of stuff, that would be great. But I'm sure there's thousands of other people and foreign residents out there that are definitely making sure their voices are being heard as well. And like I said, the main reason why I wanted to tell this story and let you guys know is, one, all you guys kept asking to find out like why it all happened and how it happened. Two, so that if you're stuck in my situation, you know what to do. Contact the embassy. If you need, I know a lot of drivers have been contacting me that want to get over here for FD. I don't know if that's counted as special circumstance. Please just contact the Japanese embassy, talk to them, tell them everything, your situation and stuff. You may be able to come into the country now, but yeah, things are definitely just up in the air. And I don't blame the Japanese government for what happened. I completely understand that, like I said, this is something that just hasn't happened before. They've never had to deal with this before. While I think, though, if they just looked at all the other countries and what they were doing, they were not banning foreign residents. You know, you have to enter the country, you do the 2 weeks quarantine. That's what I had to go through. As you guys know, we were live streaming for those 2 weeks, no vlogs were done. I also had a test done, a PCR test, where they put a swab like all the way up into your sinuses and the membrane and stuff through the nose. It's pretty uncomfortable feeling. It's a little bit painful, but like that was negative. The 2 weeks quarantine went well, no fever or anything like that. So I was all good, clean bill of health. But yeah, I just don't understand why they're not letting foreign residents return. You know, we pay the same taxes, we do everything that a Japanese citizen does. We just don't hold that piece of paper, that passport. So it's a little bit frustrating, but I just hope that this information kind of helps anyone trying to get into Japan right now. I hope that if ever anyone is dealing with this kind of situation in the future, things look a little bit weary in the world with stuff like another pandemic potentially happening, don't travel, stay put, or if you are already out of the country, cancel your flight and move and fly back as soon as you can. Move your flight to ASAP and just get back home. In hindsight, like I said, if I had known any of this was gonna go down the way it did, I would not have left the country, and I could have saved myself a lot of stress and frustration and things like that. But I wouldn't take it back because I had so much fun. I learned so many things, got to hang out with Chris, build a better relationship there and a closer one, and just, I don't know, no regrets because I made do with what I had and I had an amazing time and I grew from it. So that's what I'm taking away from it. And with that, oh, I also got a second honeymoon with my wife, 2 weeks alone with her at home. So that was pretty sick when I got home. Quarantine, that was the bright side of quarantine. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Totally different to the normal thing. Huge talking video, but like I said, all of you guys kept asking me for it. I wanted to get this out there. So there it is. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all in tomorrow's video. Back to car stuff, I promise. Peace out. Jamata.